Yes, we are now recording. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I am Cheryl R. I'm a compulsive eater, also 12-step person, obviously. So I'm going to introduce Michael in just a second here. So Michael Naylor is the director of the main Enneagram Center for Transformation and Wellbeing. He is also has professional change coach. He is a professional change coach and an Enneagram Institute faculty. He's a licensed addiction therapist and clinical supervisor. He is a member of the International Enneagram Association. He's a professional member and teacher. He's the author of the book, The Alchemy of the Enneagram in Transforming Addiction. And there is a monthly book study on that at Surrender School. So I want to read basically what he has at the bottom of his email. Compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It is a relationship between equals. Only when we know our own darkness well can we be present with the darkness of others. Compassion becomes real when we recognize our shared humanity. So, Michael, I will turn it over to you.
So I'm going to ask the question, how many people here are type 9s? And just raise your hand so Cheryl can take a count. So I just have a sense if we have more than 2 people. So anybody who knows they're a type 9, just raise your hand for a moment. Oh, quite a few. Okay. So what I'll do is I'm just going to begin, and good to know that there's a group of 9s out there that I can call on for your real life experience, because that's often the best source of information for everyone. So I'm Michael Naylor, and I've been in recovery from addiction for about 42 years, and I'm quite grateful for that period of sobriety, and have found that at year 15 in my sobriety, I hit a wall where I just didn't feel good, even though I was doing all of the step work and sponsoring, etc. And I had a therapist who said, why don't you read about your Enneagram type and start with type 4. And I read the type 4, which we call the individualist, the creative alchemist. And what the description of the type 4 did was it showed me in striking form my inner thoughts and feeling patterns that I had never been fully conscious of. And it was really kind of a bummer. It was like somebody looked down in the closet of my unconscious and just showed me what was sitting there and what was fueling my steady discontent. And I learned about the patterns of the type 4 and learned to begin to observe those patterns, and began to also take action on different practices that could help me become more conscious and less taken by the habit of the type 4. So we're talking about the type 9 today, and I just want to say a couple things about type. You know, each type describes, in some level, universal patterns that everyone has, but our particular type is one set of patterns that we tend to live in more habitually than any other type. And so every type has a way, when under stress, that they become more unconscious, less objective, more filled with anger, fear, shyness, etc., and in a sense kind of disengaged from life. Every type has a different way they do that. So when we talk about the type 9 today, even though you may not be a type 9, I'm willing to bet that most of you go, oh, that's my friend Tom. Oh my God, you just described him. Or that's my friend Mary. Oh my Lord, that's what's been going on inside her. So the purpose of the Enneagram is to cast a light into the inner workings of each type such that one begins to develop the eyes to see when we're fading out and doing those things that irritate everyone else and eventually ourselves. But also it's to bring a sense of understanding and compassion for the types that we aren't, such that we begin to see that when a person is caught in their less becoming behavior, that 9 times out of 10, they don't know they're in that pattern, and they imagine that they're healthy. So one of the things we'll talk about today is the levels of health. And the gist of it is simply this, is that when any of us gets caught up in anger, hurt, shame, fear, humiliation, we tend to have an automatic personality response that buffers that suffering so we don't feel it as directly. But externally, we take on a behavior that actually kind of pushes people away, and we don't know we're pushing them away. So when we're at our worst, the strange phenomena is that when we're at our worst, most of the time we don't even know we're at our worst. We think we're doing just fine, and if you would just heal and take care of yourself, I'd be a lot better, you know. So there's a way that the work is to bring a kind of tender acceptance and way of being with people when they're caught up in their patterns. It doesn't mean we approve, but the more that I study my type, the more I discover how often my patterns take over without my permission. It's similar to alcoholism. You know, when I came into recovery, I drank without my permission. Something else was always pushing me through there. I'd be picking up the drink after my 9,000th time. I said I wouldn't drink again. Well, it's the same way with the type patterns. And they have a way of operating independent of our wishes, and sometimes so quickly we don't even notice what's happened. So I just say, you know, enjoy the ride. We'll have lots of opportunity for questions as we go along. You can just put it in the chat box, and Cheryl, don't hesitate to let me know if something's up, and we'll take breaks and people can respond to whatever is coming up for them. So we're going to start with the type 9. So type 9s are known for a quality of sort of being naturally laid back. So if you think of Fred Rogers, one of my favorites, there's this guy who's hanging out with kids all the time who is as gentle and calm and still as a human being could be, and who had the capacity to help people feel safe, to settle down, to relax, to simply be who they were without pretense. And so the healthy type 9 tends to be gentle, cooperative, has a kind of Jedi skill in being able to sense what other people around them are feeling, is very much invested in creating opportunities for people to experience both external and internal peace. So there's a kind of deep wish they have to be able to be strong enough, clear enough to provide people the safety to just simply be as they are. And so Fred Rogers, you know, if you have access to his past shows, you know, what he did for years was teach kids how to settle down, to calm down, to accept themselves as they were, to not feel like they had to perform to receive love, but just really generated a sense of unconditional kindness for people. That's what healthy type 9s do. So then we have James Taylor, who is about as chill as any musician that I know of. And if you followed his work, you know, he's done so much around bringing loving kindness, caring, understanding through his music, and very generous with giving away what he's been given. So, you know, the healthy 9, at their very best, has these beautiful qualities. And the truth of the matter is, all the types, when they're healthy, are awesome in their own way. And all of the types, when they're not healthy, are a pain in the neck in their own particular type-oriented way. So there's no favorite or best type to be. The best type to be is a healthy version of whatever you are. So easygoing, self-effacing. You know, if you think about, you know, if you have a type 9 in your life, they tend to sort of stand back from the spotlight. When they're really healthy, they can come forward, but they have a way of kind of dissolving into the woodwork, particularly if they're scared or afraid or hurt. So let's take a trip through these. There's a great movie called The Glass Castle, I point to this movie because it's about alcoholism, and Woody Harrelson, who is a type 9, I believe, plays a type 9 in the movie. And after you've heard this presentation, I invite you to go watch the movie because it's a true story. It's a very powerful story about how incredibly challenging the delusions of alcoholism are. So, a little type 9 joke. We've got these 3 Jedi Masters who study the ancient art of avoidance. That's a big word for the type 9s because they like to avoid all kinds of conflict, interaction that's going to bring stress and all. So one of them is saying, I can sense trouble from 10 miles away. And the other one says, I'm an expert at making myself invisible. And a third one says, I am a master of deflection. The type 9, when they're under stress, has this rather powerful capacity to almost dissolve in front of you, even though they're still standing there, and to make themselves invisible such that you don't bring your attention to them. This would be an unhealthy type 9. And we're going to get to hear from a few of our type 9s who have joined us today. So, healthy type 9, receptive and reassuring. There's a way that healthy 9s see the very best in people and call it out. They're very good at being mentors to folks. When they become more stressed, they tend to get agreeable and complacent and to go along with people habitually, whether they mean to or not. So each type arrives with a certain quality of well-being. You know, little type 9 kids, moms have said, type 9s, they were the easiest ones to raise. They never raised a ruckus. They would sleep through the night. Nothing seemed to bother them. They were easygoing. Oh my gosh, what a break I had in terms of, having this, my first child be a type 9. Well, type 9s have a kind of inherent, I would say, peaceful nature. In my wife's Montessori school, the little type 9 kids are just really, there's a kind of a shyness, a quietness, a kindness, a caring. They don't make a lot of extroverted sort of movements. So for the type 9, they arrive with a potentiality for developing deeper and deeper inner peace, inner clarity, inner capacity to be strong under conflictual circumstances. But for all the types, they end up having to develop an ego to protect themselves from just the onslaughts of life. And, most of us have been raised in families that weren't perfect. And so this natural capacity that type 9s have has an ego structure that, in a sense, becomes a protective layer, a kind of a border that allows me to interact with life and protect this sensitivity I have, because 9s are very sensitive. So a basic fear for the 9, as they grow up and mature through grade school, high school, early 20s, 30s, 40s, is a fear of being cut off from everything. And sometimes it's described as a fear of annihilation. And the fear centers around this idea that if conflict happens around me, I feel like I'm going to be annihilated, and I'll do whatever I can to calm the storm or to disappear and fade in the background. So a core fear for the 9 is this fear of being cut off from everything in the midst of conflict. And the secondary fear is of losing my peace of mind and my inner stability. So there's this way that type 9s, as they're growing up, if they grow up in a family where there's a lot of trauma or upset or turbulence, develops this capacity to just almost be invisible. No, they know how to disappear into the woodwork. They know how to disappear into their room, out into the woods. But there's a way that they start living in their inner world of fantasy and creating a kind of inner sanctum of images and stories that really console them. And so we call the type 9 an introverted type. And 9s, under a lot of stress, go down the rabbit hole. Some type 9s say, sometimes I feel like a turtle with a shell. And when things get intense, I just pull my head back into the shell and nobody can bother me. So there's a real wish, in a healthy way, to be a force of peace. But if I've grown up with wounding, which almost all of us have, then part of my work is to learn to first heal my emotional wounds before I can actually land in and really feel the deeper nature of my own peaceful being. So the basic desire of the 9 is to have inner stability, peace of mind, and to avoid conflict whenever possible. So I hope some of this is resonating for our type 9s out there, and certainly Cheryl, let me know if questions start popping up. So self-image, type 9s usually have a self-image that, I am peaceful. If the rest of you blokes would just settle down a bit, we'd have a better life together. I'm relaxed and stable. Look at you get so frantic over things, but I am easygoing and friendly, man. I'm as chill as can be. Now, when I'm healthy as a 9, I can be chill in the midst of conflict and be a force of peace. But when I'm less healthy and less grounded, then I just perform being the peaceful one, and I disappear. I don't let you know what's going on with me. If you say, how are you doing, man? How's your day going? And we say, this is the type 9 saying, which is, I'm fine. What does that mean? Effed up, insecure, neurotic, emotional, don't bother me, right? So, that's the reflex for the 9 under pressure. So if we look at the 9, the peacemaker, the gentle mystic, we say that what happens when I don't feel safe and can't come out of my rabbit hole, like Alice going down the rabbit hole, when I have that such a strong aversion to conflict, what happens is I start to develop what's called a habit of sloth, which isn't laziness. It's a disengagement from what's happening in my life. I learn how to be almost on automatic pilot all the time without engaging whatever I'm doing. So, if you think about, let's say times where you drive from your home to the shopping mall, the grocery store, whatever, how often have you noticed when you finally arrive at your destination that you can't remember what you went by, that you went into kind of a zone and zoned out, and maybe you were thinking about your wife, your husband, your kids, but the whole drive there, you weren't picking up on, the trees going by, other cars. There was a way you went into a kind of zone where you disengaged from the moment. And so for the type 9, the challenge for them, what they do is they start to disengage from what they care about, because their fear is if I go after what I care about, I'm going to lose all the support that I need around me. So we say that this habit starts to develop called going along with the wishes of other people, accommodating everyone else's drives. Now, accommodation for some types is something they really need to learn, like the type 8, who tends to be quite bold and brash about what they want. Learning to be accommodating is a step in the right direction. But for the type 9, this becomes a habit. And the habit can look like saying yes when I mean no habitually, because there's something inside of me that sort of says to me that if I really say what's true for me, it's going to cause conflict, and then I'm going to lose my peace of mind or my peaceful connections with those I care about. So this habit, if you're a type 9, you know exactly what this is like. If you're not a type 9, you might look at it and go, oh, gee, that's ridiculous. Why do they get so uptight? But if you're living inside the skin of a type 9, conflict can bring up all kinds of survival fears. Like if I step into this conflict, I'm not a type 8 who can, lay everybody flat on the floor if they give me a hard time. I'm a type 9. And conflict for me is so scary. It feels like I'm going to die. I'm going to lose all my safety. So what I do is I go along. I say, yes, you want to go see, the Night of the Living Dead? Oh, sure, let's go, right? Most type 9s don't like that movie, but nonetheless, there's a sense of I habitually say yes. And part of it is there's this fear that if I really arise and speak my truth, that I will be banished, that everything that I care about will start to shake and shimmy, and I'll be unsure of nothing. I'll be unsure of everything, actually. So I wanted to stop here for a second and see if any interesting questions are popping up yet. And Cheryl,
So yeah, there is one question, and it says, how do we identify types in children?
very carefully. Sometimes it's very hard to identify type 9. My little girl, Chloe, what I noticed was that nothing upset her. You know, her brother would knock her over and she'd land, and she would just stand up and she'd smile and carry on. And so for years, we didn't realize that she was harboring some anger and resentment towards her brother because she always put on the mask of the peacemaker. She always was habitually happy. And the type 9, that's one of their strategies, is I've got a smile on my face no matter what's happened. You're stomping on my feet. I'm doing fine. It's okay. Type 8 would just sort of lay you out. A type 9, their habit is to say, everything's fine. It's okay. I don't need anything. I have no needs. In fact, I'm kind of invisible. Don't look towards me, you know? So in children, I just say wait until they're 9 or 10 before you even have that conversation, because kids go through so many changes, and it's not an easy thing to do. It can be done, but some kids are sort of don't really show their type until they start hitting their teen years. So, any other questions popping up?
Not on chat, but does anybody in the audience want to share? You can raise your hand. That's another option besides the chat.
Yeah. Any type 9s out there want to share some of your experience, strength, and hope? This is the one type that goes, no, thank you. Not today. Talk to me tomorrow. Oh, there's a hand.
I'm definitely a type 9. And when I'm in that flow with another human being, and I can be so calm and at peace, and it's like I'm not even there. It's all about them. It's goodness and kindness and love. Interpersonal, that's work. Interpersonally, I had that with my close friends, but you hit me right on the head with, boy, I'm scared of romantic relationships and things like that, because I'm scared of that deep wound you just said. So this is really, really powerful. And the more the strength and hope is, the more I treat myself like I hold space for other people, the more I am able to hold space, and the more I love myself, and the more I learn that I deserve that too. And it just builds on each other.
Awesome.
Thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I just come in for a second, Michael?
Yes.
Because we put the presentations on YouTube as a way to bring the message to more people around the world, we would let people know if you're going to ask your question by coming in live, it will go on YouTube, but we can blur your face, or you can just let me know, take this off of YouTube. So it's better if we can send the questions to Cheryl in chat, because we don't want to bust your anonymity. But we also want to give the YouTube audience the value of Michael's presentation. But if you don't want to be on YouTube, please don't come in with your question, but rather send it to Cheryl in the chat. Thank you.
Of course, the other thing they might want to do is just turn their video off when they ask the question. I mean, that's a possibility.
If then their voice, it's also the voice. If you don't want to be on YouTube, just please send the question to Cheryl.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Got it.
We can blur video.
Thank you. Yeah, so I did get one question, but I answered it, but I'll answer it for everybody. And they asked, what was the movie that he mentioned? And it was The Glass Castle was the good movie he mentioned. And
Yes.
the movie he mentioned that 9s don't like is Night of the Living Dead. So if you're not a 9, you might want to watch that, but nobody else would. So there's the 2 movies mentioned so far. Thank you.
So there's the other movie that's really worth watching is the documentary on Fred Rogers, which captures his life story, and it's really quite moving. Then there's also a movie that Tom Hanks plays Fred Rogers, but I think the documentary is the most powerful. So it looks like we have a couple other raised hands. Awesome.
I wanted to ask you, I believe that I'm a type 9. I know you're not finished with your presentation. I believe I'm a type 9, and I fear conflict. When I'm in conflict with someone, I fear that, especially if the other person goes into this silent treatment mode, their silent treatment. And I fear that conflict can turn physical. I don't know. It must have happened in my family of origin, but that's one of my fears, that it could potentially turn into physical conflict, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
yes,
Thank,
yes,
thank you. Thank you so much.
yes, and definitely, I would just say, every type 9 has a slightly different version of what annihilation might look like. If we have this conflict and I express my upset, that one version might be I'll be put on a space pod and sent out into the universe, never to come back. The other is, for whatever reasons, I start imagining physical reaction from another person. For another person, it might be that someone I care about, instead of getting aggressive or assertive or loud, they abandon me and take off. But they're all slightly different ways of feeling like I'm going to lose my supports. So the challenge for any type 9 is, how do I start to lean into that fear and express what's true for me, as opposed to, until I learn to do that, I just avoid the subject. I don't talk about it. I don't want to wake up the dragon in somebody. But at some point in my life, especially in my recovery, if I don't learn how to speak my truth without shame, blame, or judgment, and really become authentic in how I live, then my relationships will be at stake. And what tends to happen for type 9s, if they hold on to their anger long enough and they play that peacemaker role to the hilt, is at some point their addiction starts talking to them. It starts to make sense. It's almost like that movie, that replayed movie. What do we call the great movie of any recovering person is, oh, it was so great to be using. I can't remember that it tortured me and almost killed me. That particular movie will start to play if I sit on my anger long enough. So that's why we're talking about this as a wake-up call for the type 9. If I'm accommodating and I'm so terrified that I can't speak my truth with people I care about, then I'm setting myself up for my addiction to start speaking louder than my will. So just something to pay attention to.
I'm definitely a 9, definitely a peacemaker. I have a situation today, right, presently, where I have to talk to a friend because she doesn't have my back. She badmouths me behind my back. And that's not a friend. That I don't want my closest friends to be frenemies with me. I want them to be my closest friend. So I would annihilate and walk out of their lives without recovery. But with recovery, it's like you have to have a conversation with her and talk to her about, you find this behavior very upsetting.
Yeah.
And that's the program working in my life. I'm so grateful for it. And I love your talks on Mondays. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Been resonating a lot with what's being said. I don't know anything about the subject, but I find it also quite synchronous that I find myself here tonight, because I came to this meeting very spontaneously and I quite resonate with a lot of these things. And I even remember as a child, like hiding away a lot, like under the table in the tablecloth or under my bed, to try avoid like the aggression of my father, or in the situation of aftercare, my teachers. And even now in my adult life, I find myself very much shutting down in conflicts, even to the point where if someone's getting angry with me, I can start shaking like uncontrollably, like my hands start twitching and stuff. It's quite overwhelming.
Well, one of the things that I'm going to talk about towards the end is things that type 9s can start doing, small actions that help them to be able to bear with conflict and lean into it. So, and the good news is that if you're aware that you really get stressed when there's conflict, this isn't something that you want to try to figure it out by yourself. Whether it's in a recovery meeting or wherever, having friends who can support you in the midst of that fear response can help you calm down and start to articulate, the small things that need to be said, in a conflict. So it's all learnable. But this is the Achilles heel for the 9. When conflict starts to occur, it's almost like I feel like I'm almost just scattering for the woods as quick as I can go, or my body's just freaking out. And so every type has some Achilles heel that with enough awareness and practice and meditation practice, they can start to not be taken by the pattern. But I haven't met a type 9 who doesn't have something similar to what you're talking about. And I imagine, the more that you even share it with trusted men, trusted women, the more it will start to quiet a bit. So thank you for that.
I'm resonating a lot with the 9. Thank you for this talk. It's so helpful. I thought this was like how everybody was. So it's really interesting to kind of like see it as, how very different it is. And when I've taken the test before, I've actually 4s and 5s come up close. And I wonder, like, am I confused? But now all of the 9 feels so spot on, especially with the isolating, the hiding, the big fears. And what I'm getting a little bit emotional because I'm doing a lot of adult ACA work. So, my father was an alcoholic. And so I'm going through all of this step 4 stuff. And it's hard for me to know, like, is that who I am? Or is that who I became? In a situation where I had to people please to be accepted, I had to fawn, I had to run in order to be safe. So
Yeah.
I'm a little confused by it, but it feels like this is the right place because I've always been kind of quote unquote even keeled, but inside I have like anxiety and fear that I think I just hide. And
Okay. Well,
so
you've
that's
raised.
it. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you for your questions. These are really important questions. So I wouldn't worry about too much at this point whether you're a 4 or 5 or like you resonate with a 9. So that's great. When we talk about the 4 and 5 over the next couple of months, there'll be similarities. We say 4, 5, and 9 are kind of cousins, but the 9 is the one that has the strongest aversion to conflict, and feels that sense of incredible vulnerability around conflict. And if you've grown up in a family like you have, where there's terror and fear, then that habit of disappearing and people pleasing becomes a survival mechanism. I mean, you got to, the type 9 learns how to survive. And what does the type 9 do? They either become, overly friendly even when they're scared to death, or they disappear and go into their fantasy life, read a lot of books, watch a lot of television, go out in the woods. But all of it, to the extent that I'd use that habitually, it depends on how often I was scared as a little boy or a little girl. If I'm a type 9 who grows up in a family where there isn't all of that trauma, then I'm still easygoing and down to earth, but I'm that way inside and out. I feel that easygoingness in my heart and soul, and I express it through my peaceful behavior. So, you just described exactly what goes on for a 9 who grows up with an alcoholic parent, and just, how you people please, do whatever you can to avoid, suffering. And that can be unlearned. It just takes time.
Michael, I identify as a self-preservation 9, and everything that you've said resonates with me. I did grow up with conflict. In fact, I remember as a child, I had a habit of always holding my ears, covering my ears so I couldn't hear anything. And even if I went into situations, a bit like the sort of first little caption you brought up about the cartoon, I can sense conflict. I can sense it in a room, and I get the vibe. There's something, and I've got to get out of here. So I'm always ready. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, I've become, and I don't know whether it's characteristic of all types, but one of the things that I very much identify with is the seeker. I'm always seeking. I'm always seeking. I'm seeking. I always think I'm trying to find my way home. I'm always looking for, I read a lot of spiritual books. I read a lot of, I'm always trying to understand. So is that a type 9 thing, or is that a thing that all types do? Is that something?
Well, certainly one that the 9s do. I mean, that whole archetype of the mystic, the seeker. Think of, Carl Jung, it was a type 9, deep seeker. So, every 9 is going to be slightly different, but that's certainly an archetype that is embodied by type 9s, and there's that kind of wish to get back home. That's sort of one of the archetypes of the 9. Is part of it's like returning to feeling like I'm at home in my own being, but also that I'm, we say the highest, healthiest aspect of the 9 is a feeling like I'm at home on planet Earth. I belong here. I'm amongst brothers and sisters. So there's a, which is a spiritual quality of a sense of universal connection with people. So that's the deeper wish for the 9, is to feel like I am in this state of union with the universe, with people, with my life, and it sounds like that's been leading you throughout your life.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so here's one question that comes in, or that came in, and that is, can you talk about the types? Is that nature or nurture?
Well, the theory is that it's that we're born with our type, and depending on the safety we experience or the fear we experience, we call on either the more defensive patterns of the type or the healthier aspects of the type. But that, so our environment, the nurturing part, is what brings out either the best or the worst of the type. But the theory is that we're born with our type. Now, is there anything that confirms that statistically, with valid research? No, there is not. It's kind of the anecdotal belief. So it doesn't really matter on a certain level, as much as just finding what your type is now and then working with the pattern. So I know for myself, being a little type 4 kid, that was my earliest memories. I was in that 4 space. And nobody else in my family was a 4. So anyway. So how about,
and so one more question, and that is, are there any health issues that are tied to the type 9?
Nothing that really distinguishes them from other types in terms of, they can get have all of the health issues that other types have, and that's dependent on environment, etc. But there's no, particular pathology that shows up for the 9 that we know of, that I know of. Okay, so the wake-up call for the 9 is noticing if I habitually go along with and accommodate everyone else's wishes. Now, going along with other people isn't a bad thing, except when it becomes habitual, when it's the only card I can play, and when it stops me from dealing with conflict that I need to engage. So we're not saying that being accommodating is a bad thing. It's just how it gets used in the life of the 9. So that said, part of the work is developing more capacity to sense and feel my patterns, so I start to be able to observe myself in the moment, going into accommodation, and begin to observe myself in the moment, shutting myself down and not judging myself for what I see. The more often I can be with my pattern of avoidance and really sense it and feel it without beating myself up, it starts to wake up my will and my personal wish to move through my fear pattern. So this isn't about grabbing yourself by the collar and saying, okay, must face this conflict and pushing myself towards it. The first real step is, how do I learn to observe myself in my heart, my body, in my thinking center, when I'm caught in the pattern, and let's say I'm having that fear that they're going to be aggressive with me. I don't push that down. I just notice it. I feel the fear in my body. I breathe and relax a little bit and try to relax my response to it and just abide with it. And there's something around this process of not beating myself up. It starts to shift the hypnotic power of the trance of the 9. So we say that as the 9 gets healthier, they begin to develop permission and a sense that it's okay for me to be engaged with what I care about. And if you look at the Enneagram graphic, 9 has a line to 3, and 3 is the type called the inspired achiever. And there's something, the growth pattern for the 9 is I start to really sense and feel my own authentic dreams and to step into what I care about. And that's, that practice alone, even practicing with that, is what starts to break the pattern of accommodation. So we say the path of transformation is the path of self-remembering. I arise as an individual. And type 9 is one of the types that has sometimes a really hard time locating what they individually want. Like, you say to a type 9, well, what would you like to do today? And a lot of times they'll say, well, what would you like to do? I'm with whatever you decide. And that's the sort of default that begins to occur for the type 9. So let's just take a look at the levels of health. And so every type is represented here on this Enneagram graphic above. And so with the type 9, you see this little star here, which is where the 9 point on the Enneagram is. We say that all the types have 9 levels within them, 9 levels of health, 9 levels of awareness. And so if we look at the type 9, the first 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3, are considered the healthy levels, when I'm not caught up in my fear patterns, when I've developed the capacity to speak my truth, to engage anger, to not be so thrown off by the upset of other people around me. And when I'm at these higher levels, we say that this is like Fred Rogers and his ability to bring peace and comfort to kids who are having a hard time. This is, the capacity of teachers to be able to, be calm in the midst of the upset of their students. There's a way that I start to be able to hold on to a peaceful inner state while I'm in the presence of external conflict. And this is all a sign of my growth and maturation. We use the word unself-conscious, which means that there's, we say with healthy 9s, what you see is what you get. I don't have a strong mask I put up. When I'm healthy, this is who I am, like it or not. And there's a quality of unself-consciousness in the healthy 9. And when I'm, really healthy as a 9, there's also an unpretentiousness. We say that type 9s are one of the types that are most easily connected with the idea of right size, the sense that, we're on the same level together. I'm not above or below you. A healthy 9 feels that kind of connection and communion with people. And also, we've talked a lot about this idea, when I'm healthy as a 9, I have the ability to bring a kind of unifying idea to parties who are at conflict with each other. We say the healthy 9 has this ability to sense into the inner world of people around them, and when they're really healthy, can help people who are in conflict to find that one common ground of unity that brings them together and helps them to back off of their oppositional stances. So that's a healthy 9. But as I get caught up in more of my fear, or I don't have that sense of inner calm within me because of my own trauma I've gone through, this is where I start to get accommodating and self-effacing and, invisible. I do that to survive. I can be kind even when I'm terrified. I don't let you know that I'm anxious inside. As I go down the levels, what happens is I start to find more and more ways to just kind of comfort seek. And type 9s will say, well, one of the ways I can do that is through substance use. Others will say it's through food. Others will say they have this rich fantasy life that they go into to escape the suffering around them. But there's a way that I start to develop a kind of inner strategy for kind of numbing myself out away from the suffering around me. So I start to go more internal. People can't see who I am anymore. And at level 6, we say that the 9 gets appeasing. I'll do whatever you want. You just tell me what to do, I'll do it. So these levels here, 1, 2, and 3, we can say that when somebody is embodying them, that they have the ability to observe themselves with accuracy, such that if they say something that hurts somebody, they know it, they feel it, and they apologize. Or if somebody is offensive to them, they feel it, but they also are aware that anybody who is hurting them is also suffering themselves. So there's kind of an equanimity that starts to show up for the type 9. But as I drop down the levels, more and more as I become more disappearing, I'm also become more caught in the fantasy that I'm okay and you're not. And there's a way that I start to, in the face of becoming what 9s will do sometimes when they are totally cut off from their angers, they get passive aggressive. And instead of, outwardly saying, I'm angry. They do something that sort of comes in from behind you and stabs you in the back or something along those lines. So, you know, what happens at level 6 when I'm resigned is I also get passive aggressive with the expression of my anger. Now, all the types have some version of this, and the irony is that at the healthy levels, where I'm a peacemaker, it turns into somebody who's not a peacemaker at level 6. It turns into its opposite. So we say that the type 9 can start to indulge themselves in comfort seeking and staying comfortable at any price. And then in recovery, the way this shows up, I've worked with a number of type 9s as they get sober, but they're so nervous about following their own path of self-expression or doing anything that would upset anybody, is they end up boring themselves to death. They develop a kind of comfortable rut that they follow over and over again until one day their addiction rises up and just knocks them to the ground, because you can only fake it for so long. I mean, that's the thing about recovery. To the extent that I'm becoming more authentic, to that extent, my Achilles heel of relapse gets farther and farther away. And the type 9, when they're into that habitual peacemaking role, pretty soon people start to abandon them because they can't get a real expression from them. So it's, you know, it's a powerful pattern that, you know, if you're a type 9, you will get to navigate different versions of this throughout your recovery. So then there's level 7, which we call the level of mental disorder, where I shut down. I start disassociating from any of my experiences, so I can't feel what's real. And at level 9, I just become a ghost. I can't sense anything that I care for. But 7, 8, and 9, when people come into recovery, they're usually hanging in around level 6 and 7, and they need the support and wisdom of others to get their feet back on the ground. So, part of the work is to realize when people are at this level, they're, like type 9s. I've worked with type 9s in many of my groups, and I'll notice after a couple weeks in a men's group, there'll be one guy who never speaks, and he's so good at blending into the furniture, I don't even notice him. And at some point I say to him, Tom, how do you do that? You've become a part of the couch. And he said, well, I learned that in grade school. I learned how to become invisible in front of my teachers, and it's just a place I go when I'm scared. And I said, well, I see you now, and I'm going to keep calling you forward because we need to hear from you. So becoming a ghost and sort of disappearing is one of the strategies for the type 9.
I noticed that when I'm doing the Enneagram test, I'm actually questioning myself whether I'm answering as I was before recovery and how I am now in recovery. Now, looking at the slides that you just went through, I can see that that recovery is allowing me to, because of the work I've put in, how I am not as much in a lot of those questions. I'm not as much what I used to be as what I am now, because I feel more genuine to who I am now.
Awesome.
So it doesn't take, my question, I guess, would be, it doesn't take me out of that type. It's just allowing me to be at a higher level would be the answer, I guess.
Yes. You would. So the healthier you get, the more you will manifest the gifts of the type. And the more you'll be an authentic peacemaker rather than someone who is habitually drawn towards hiding or acting like they're doing fine when they're not doing fine. So the evolution is towards the healthier and healthier expression of the type 9, which is, confident, calm, easygoing, able to maintain a quality of inner peace and authenticity regardless of whether there's peace around them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the kind of just the letting go of all that, and also the work on the self-love also helps to
absolutely.
Really bring out. Okay.
It's just an observation about what you've just talked through, Michael. And thank you so much for this. I'm really appreciate it. I've done about 3 tests and I'm coming up as a 9 each time, and with a wing 1, which I haven't looked into yet. But I've got this book.
Yeah, that's the best.
You mentioned, you said it was the best one. I've already read your book though.
Oh, awesome.
Which I really enjoyed. Thank you.
Oh, great.
So when I came into recovery, I was all the things that you spoke about. I was neglectful, I was disorientating, I was disassociating. I can still dissociate, self-abandoning, and I was a complete ghost. I was completely lost, utterly lost.
Yes.
And I'm almost 10 years in now, and I find today, I do meditate. I've meditated since I was 5 months sober.
Awesome.
I'm peaceful. I'm unself-conscious. I'm mediating. I think I'm unpretentious, and I'm on the same level of others. I just want to try and help others, and I can literally walk into a room and smell an atmosphere. I just know
What's going on, huh?
instantaneously if there's something wrong with someone, if they need to talk, if they're hiding something.
Yeah.
And my mask fell off a long time ago. It just doesn't really appear now.
Awesome.
I let that mask go, and it's only through doing a 12-step program. But I'm really interested in the Enneagram, and I'm going to definitely delve further into it. It's just an incredible experience listening to you, and thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I'm challenging myself because I love to be in the background. I sit in the back seat and I view the world going on, and my nineism has got me quite housebound.
I can do that.
In recovery, and it's really, I don't want to label it bad, but it's really not good. And I'm seeking all these classes and clubs and groups and workshops online, and then it's overwhelming. And I know what I need to do is go out and be among the people. But, I could get into a relationship with somebody when I was drinking without knowing their second name. I didn't give a, it didn't matter. I moved in with them, whatever. And now it's like, don't you come near me, because I just can't handle the chaos. It's almost like people bring chaos. So I'm quite happy with my dogs, but it's not healthy, and when you were talking about the levels, it was a bit of a wake-up call. So thank you for that, because I'm not doing well. I'm not doing well. So before I start bawling, I'm gonna leave it there, but thank you.
Yeah, well, so just a reflection on that is that what we call the introverted types, 4, 5, and 9s, can become too comfortable with isolating, but it's not necessarily a fulfilling isolation. It can compensate for a while for my fear around dealing with the chaos of human beings, because they are chaotic. But it ends up isolating me more and more, and I almost become like a dried up flower. My love of life just starts to kind of get squeezed, and then I'm like this thing that gets up out of bed every day and then goes to bed when the sun goes down, and I don't have any life expression. And at a certain point, that's what I'm going to relapse. I'm going to do something that wakes me up out of the trance. So do you have friends that you could call up and say, hey, would you help me get out of the house here? Somebody taped me to the bed and I can't get away from it. I mean, do you have any buddies?
I probably do. I want to say no, because this has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah.
And of course, none of them have called me, of course. So, but there are, and yeah.
So whatever you can do to get yourself going it's important, because that habit of just isolating gets harder and harder to work against. It's like a gravitational pull, and it's like,
sure.
So anyway, thank you for sharing.
No, thank you. Thanks for this.
Sure. So Cheryl, I think I'm going to go to some of the recommendations for the 9.
Yep. No more questions right now, Michael. So cool.
Okay, awesome. So just a quick look at the levels. At my best, I'm self-possessed, I'm autonomous. I don't need to be codependent to feel comfortable in my own skin. I have equanimity, contentment with myself, just being myself. This is a higher level of the type 9. Paradoxically, because you're at one with yourself, you're able to form more profound relationships, so that neediness starts to turn into a more graceful way of communing with people. And there's a way that you're in connection with your aliveness, and part of being alive is realizing I have a passion for life that I need to express. If I don't express that, I am inviting my addiction back into my life. So at level 2, again, healthy level, receptive, accepting, unself-conscious, emotionally stable. These are all healthy attributes of the type 9. Trusting, I'm at ease with myself and others. I feel a communion with people around me. Patient and unpretentious. Level 3, still a healthy level. There's a natural optimism. Say that type 9s just have a sense that things will work out. Things will get better. There's a way that they can carry that natural positivity that other types don't do as easily. And one thing that maybe haven't said enough about is just when a 9 is healthy, you start to feel calm and peaceful around them. They emit a kind of calming energy that allows people to relax, to feel less tense, to feel like it's safe. And that particular capacity can help them in terms of being harmonizers for groups. So a good mediator, synthesizer, and communicator. Now, when we drop down to level 4, this is where we start to deal with unresolved hurt, sadness, fear that we acquired in childhood and throughout our life. And so at level 4, I become accommodating. And there's a way that I have a tendency to idealize other people and maybe try to sort of, hang on onto their wings as they go flying forward in the world. So there's a tendency also to become conventional and sort of do what's expected of me, so I don't draw any flack or upset from people. And sometimes 9s are really good at having great stock sayings to deflect others who were mad at them. And so level 5, I'm getting more disengaged, unreflective, inattentive. I don't want to be affected, so I become unresponsive. I start to isolate, like the last woman talked about. I can't be affected if I don't go out into the world. And I start to walk away from problems and sweep things under the rug, which is, again, is what in the long run is going to set me up for relapse. I get kind of lazy and ruminative, speculating in kind of vague and general ways, start to feast on comforting fantasies, begin to tune out reality, and just become more and more oblivious to what's real in the world because I'm going more and more internal into my fantasy life. And at level 6, the code of peace at any price is what starts to dominate me, and I'll do whatever it takes. So I can really become stubborn and resigned. Type 9s are one of the types that it's really a good idea to try not to put pressure on them to change, but instead to offer suggestions without any kind of pressure, because 9s can dig their heels into the core of the earth and they don't like to be pushed. Again, down at this level 6, I start to rely on wishful thinking, fantasy life thinking as a way of soothing myself because I'm not able to function very well in the world. So 7, 8, and 9, we've talked a bit about. It goes from bad to worse. I want to just take a look at some of the recommendations for the type 9 and just see if this resonates for you type 9s out there. Or I'm sure some of you have type 9s in your life that you wonder, is there any blood in their veins? I can't get a response out of them. And we'll get a chance to hear from you. So, personal development practices. Examine your type's tendency to go along with others and doing what they want to keep the peace and be nice. So you're invited to try not going along with people so quickly. If someone says, you want to go do this? You say, I don't know, I'm going to have to think about that for a while. I'll get back to you. So whenever you feel that pressure to make a decision, you just say, that's cool, I just need time. I just need some time, I'll get back to you. And then the challenge is to really inquire within yourself around, do I want to go do this with this person? Do I feel safe with them? Or am I feeling that pressure to conform because I don't want them to be mad at me? So the challenge is to start practicing with saying no. No, I don't want to go. And in your fantasy life, you may imagine, okay, now I'm going to be destroyed because I said no. But it's just to start practicing leaning into getting comfortable when no means no. I don't really want to do this. I'd rather go do this over here. So the next one is exert yourself. Force yourself to pay attention to what's going on. Because there's a tendency for type 9s under pressure and conflict to kind of drift off and not sort of feel whatever the tension is in the room, to not sense into what's really bothering them, and just to kind of go into a little daydream. So the challenge is working to become an active participant in the world. Try to stay engaged. Notice when you drift off. I mean, that's the default for the 9. If I'm starting to feel nervous, I can kind of drift off. And, you know, if you have close friends in your life, they can be great at letting you know, hey, Mary, you're fading off into the fog. Come back. Somehow you've just started floating out there. And if you're a type 9 and you have some friends who can do that with gentleness and kindness, it can help interrupt a kind of habit of kind of disappearing when things are starting to feel tense or challenging. So you're even, let's see, what else we must say? The other thing I think that comes up for the 9 is this whole thing around, I get attached to peace, and peace can be comfort. Peace of mind can be, you know, I don't want to talk about this conflict because it stirs up my inner sense of peace. So how do I learn to become comfortable with things being unsettled? And part of the work, I think, has to do with developing a meditation practice that allows you to relax and settle into a kind of internal peacefulness and solidness that you carry with you wherever you go. So when that conflict starts to occur in front of you, you have a way of bringing your attention down into your body and finding and grounding that state of confidence and steadiness that you develop through your meditation, so that the external challenges or the conversations or whatever the upset is doesn't take all of your attention. So if you haven't developed a kind of core meditation practice for really grounding in your body, that's one of the most important things that you can do to be able to stabilize yourself. So we say exercise frequently. Sometimes 9s have this tendency of forgetting that they have a body that needs to move, that needs activity, that part of what keeps an individual awake is their ability to tap into their physicality. So, if you don't have an exercise pattern yet, which 9s and 4s and 5s, sometimes exercise is the last thing they even consider. Like, okay, if it means I have to die from not exercising, well, I'll just die a little bit early. So the challenge is to notice, do I embody my life's energy? Do I go for regular walks? Do I do gardening? Do I lift weights? Do I go swimming? Do I do something that really enlivens this physical form and develops in me a sense of strength in my physicality? This is huge for the type 9 in terms of developing a kind of confidence in their ability to withstand pressure or conflict or upset. So develop body awareness. And then there's this idea of learning to trust your feelings, right? So type 9s, sometimes I've talked with type 9s and I've said, did you get angry? Oh, well, it was 30 years ago I got upset once. I'm going, that's not good. You're not paying attention. Part of your work is to start to be okay with the feeling of anger as it arises inside of you. And a lot of type 9s have the sense that if I let this anger come up, I'm going to come out swinging and I'll be this aggressive person. The truth is, if you suppress it long enough, when it gets triggered, you will come out swinging, right? And you may bring a chainsaw with you. So the challenge is, how do I learn to feel my anger and even express it? Like, I'm really angry that you did that. Really, I just want you to know that that really triggers my anger. So at least I'm expressing it, I'm feeling it. The tendency is whatever we suppress, when it gets triggered, will come out in what might be called haunted form, right? So I'm sure every one of you have had that experience of suppressing anger and suppressing and suppressing, and then finally something tips the scale and you come out like a dragon, right? So the encouragement is to start talking about the smaller things that are irritating you without laying a trip on yourself, because sometimes nines have this idea, like, if I'm angry, that means I'm being a bad person, or this can be spoken about in a weird way in recovery, like somehow anger is something I'm supposed to get rid of. Well, good luck on getting rid of it. Now, anger simply is a signaling device inside of me that tells me whether, I'm getting what I need, or whether I'm expressing what I need, or it might even be tapping into some ego structure where I'm feeling like, I'm not equal to other people, and so anger comes up. But it's a protective emotion that's communicating with me, that's not meant to be killed. So if you've been given that message inadvertently, that somehow you get rid of anger, I invite you to let go of that and start listening to that signaling system. Okay. So one of the things that sometimes happens for nines as they get towards the end of their life is they will discover, oh my God, I've gone along with people for so long that I missed my own dreams. I miss living what I really care about. And this is one of the deepest sadnesses for type nines, is if they, become so good at accommodating and they get strokes for it, and then they, in a sense, get hypnotized by it. My deeper love of life, what I care about in the core of my being, maybe what my higher power has given me as a gift to express, doesn't get expressed. So again, there's an emergency quality to this around, am I just numbing myself out to keep the peace? That's the bigger question. So I want to just stop here and see if we got any other questions popping up, or shares by type nines that reflects their experience, strength, and hope.
Yeah, I just want to confirm what you said, Michael, about the anger. Whenever I came upon the Enneagram and I read about the nines and they talked about repressed anger, and I thought, I'm not an angry person. I'm a very peaceful person. And when I reflected, when I looked back over the years, now this is before I actually came to the Enneagram, but I was in recovery. When I made huge changes in my life, it was when I got angry. I had to get angry to change things. And it was really a part of me was saying, I'm not putting up with this anymore. You're not going to speak to me like that anymore. And people even said because I'm always this peaceful person. And then all of a sudden this person erupted out of me, and it was like, who is this person? So what I want to confirm that, because growing up, because before I come into recovery, the anger in me was rage, and the rage was frightening for me as a child. I was so frightened of the rage, and I was always afraid of it getting out of control. So I was always afraid of my anger because it was so intense. And because it was destructive, it was a really intense rage. But so I just wanted to say to anybody, actually, those big changes in my life have happened when I got angry. I needed to get angry in order to change things, because I was always a peace at any price. But I paid the price for the peace at any price. So it was only when I got angry, and it just happened. And I always thought, I'm doing something wrong. I'm an awful person. And I always remember one particular time, I heard this voice speaking to me, and you haven't done anything wrong. Don't worry.
Awesome.
And so it's that sense of getting comfortable with, it's okay to get angry. It's a very healthy emotion, as long as I can use it to create the change that I want in my life. I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a 9. I completely agree with everything, and I just wanted to keep my face and voice hidden for the whole time. And I thought, no, I have to I have to come in. What really got me was what you said, to participate in life with the passion of life. And I find I don't know what my passion is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any tips of how to go about finding out what they might be?
Yeah, I do. So, I mean, the first thing to notice is I'm not in contact with my passion. I can't feel it. So, one of the things, do you exercise regularly?
I'm in a wheelchair. No, I don't.
Oh,
Okay. Okay. So, anything that helps you to start experiencing your body, because the instinct of passion is located in the body, and if I don't start to inhabit my body and feel it in some way, then what happens is that the type 9 pattern is to disassociate from my passion. That's the survival mechanism that little boys and little girls learn as kids, like to almost become invisible to my own body and what I want and my own anger and what my anger is telling me. So part of the work is, one is to work with a coach like myself or a therapist and work with how do I develop more body sensitivity. Also learning to notice, how is it that I don't hear the whispers of my passion, that I've gotten so habituated to not listening, but maybe they're even poking at me a little bit. Maybe it's maybe it comes as a fleeting wish to paint. So just to give you an example, a lot of times 9s say when they start working on sensing their passion, is as they start to get close to it, they get tired and they want to take a nap. It's like, I gotta go take a nap.
Okay.
This is too much. And so that's always a clue that you're headed towards something that's going to wake you up, because it's almost like if I really wake up to my passion, my worst fear is going to come to me, which is I'm going to upset people or they'll be mad at me. Maybe they're used to me just not having passion, and that's how I survived as a little girl. I mean, what was true for you as a little girl? Did you have anybody supporting your passionate interests?
Not at all, no.
Yeah. So part of the work, if you're in recovery, is to get some recovery friends and ask them, could you help me learn to sense my passion? And when you see I'm getting ready to take a nap, to try to keep me awake. I remember this one guy I worked with who he said, I want to lift weights. I said, great. So how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to work out. I said, great. Call me when you get home. 3 days went by, and I called him up and I said, what happened, Tom? Well, I got out the front door and I was so tired I had to go back and take a nap. And I did that 3 days in a row. I didn't make it to the gym because it's tiredness. So that's to be expected. And if you have some coaching or a therapist or friends who have a sense of this, they can say, okay, hang on, you're going to be tired, but we're going to help you walk through it gently. So that's one way of working with it.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That was very helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So one question on here they asked is, let me see it. Got lots of stuff here. Is chronic pain or autoimmune issues common with 9s?
I would say not necessarily common at all. And I don't think that particular ailment specializes in with certain types. I've seen all the types have variations on that. So that's been my experience, and I don't know of any research that would confirm that.
Hi there. I guess I have a quick question about the likelihood that your parent one of your parent also is a 9, and that these behaviors are also learned.
Well, I would say they could get reinforced. So if you and your mom are type 9s, there's a good chance that you supported each other's patterns depending on your level of health, right? If you had a really healthy type 9 mom, she would have been really encouraging you to move past your fears and to step into your passion and what's true for you. If your mom was also bottled up with fear and a fear of sort of showing herself and being her true self, then she may have encouraged you to do the same thing to keep her happy. So it all depends on the interaction between the two of you.
Okay, there we go. Yes, thank you, Michael. Then
Yes.
my grandmother, I know for sure after this one is a type 9.
What
I
did you
know for
notice?
sure.
What did you notice
Yes.
in her?
Um, because she has always been the peacemaker in this, like she never wants to talk about anything deep. She stays away from confrontation. She's just like, mm-mm. If it's something that's a little tension, no, let's talk about something else, or let's go out, let's do this.
Yeah,
And it's like, why do you always? We just want to have a discussion. No. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I kind of noticed it while we were going through on Saturdays with Surrender School and Cheryl, and I was like, I think she is, but most definitely after this one, yeah, she is.
Awesome.
Which helps me. So I'm just like, okay, now I know how to either approach or just feel like, okay, it's fine.
Yeah, because underneath it is a terror.
Yes.
That if I just even lean into whatever you want to talk about, it could be the end of me. So
yes.
Why? Let's go over here. Let's go over there.
Yeah.
Like, no, we don't need to get, So, and for some reason, she probably had a lot of experiences that taught her that if she comes forward with the truth, that it could be bad news for her.
She did. She's older. She's in her 70s. So, and I know a little bit about something just from her daughters and my mom and stuff. But so I know she did. So it's understandable. But this
Yeah.
just helps me just give more compassion and just like, okay, it's fine.
And,
It's who
what
you
is
are.
your type? What's your type?
I'm a perfectionist. I'm a type 1.
All right.
Type
Okay.
1 sexual at that. So yeah.
All right. That's a great combination. Well, we'll get to talk next month about this.
Yeah, I can't wait. Well,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Okay, so Cheryl.
Yeah, I want to share one thing. I
Yeah.
never knew, my mother died when I was 19, and I never thought about what type she was. But as I listened more and more to 9, she was afraid of everything. And so part of me ended up afraid of everything, but I'm an 8, so I kept busting out all the time.
Yes.
Because that fear, right? I mean, she was literally, like, we were the only kids that rode on our block on our bicycles. We could never go anywhere else. And everything in me wanted to, right? So it's just fascinating because I'd never thought about what type. But from what you're saying today, I'm relatively sure that she was a 9, because she was, I mean, she kind of disappeared and never had an opinion on anything. My dad was an 8, and he had an opinion on everything, but she had pretty much not an opinion on anything. So anyway, yeah, really, really good. I appreciate that very much.
My question to you is, if a person, aka me, is in denial, how do I accurately assess myself to get the accurate type? Because I did this Enneagram years ago. And what I get today is not what I got then.
And how is that different today and back then?
I believe I have more awareness of who I am and my struggles and my reality.
Well, so what I would just encourage you to do is keep reading about the 9, and whether it's in my book or Wisdom of the Enneagram, and the more you become aware of the patterns, it's just even to just your ability to observe yourself doing the pattern gets stronger and stronger. So it depends, all of this depends on self-awareness. If I don't have the ability to observe myself, then I can't type myself. And so part of the work in the beginning, it sounds like you resonated with a lot of what was said today. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So one way that people work with this is at the end of the day, they have a list of the characteristics of the type, like the type 9, and they review their day to notice, when did I exhibit some of those patterns of the 9? So it becomes a way of waking myself up. It's sort of like taking, for an inventory at the end of the night, but this is a type inventory where I'm just noticing, okay, today as a type 9, did I notice moments where I avoided conflict? Did I notice moments where I habitually said yes when I meant no? Did I avoid something that's important for me to talk about today? Just so I'm just doing a review, not to beat myself up, but just to notice when the pattern took over. And the more often you begin that kind of observation, the more you're going to be able to start stepping into making decisions or dealing with conflict and speaking your truth. But that's one way to start waking up to a deeper understanding of your type. So, if you've got any of those books, I would suggest you read the Type 9 and just make a list of the characteristics that you resonate most with, and then just start to observe yourself without beating yourself up.
I love that. I love the idea of reflecting at the end of the day. Thank you so much for that tool. Appreciate you very much.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Okay, so we have hit the top of the hour. So I don't know. I know that, Michael, you're going to stay another half an hour. Patrick, did you want to stop recording and then we can do the rest of the questions and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Cheryl, for hosting. Doing such a great job. Thank you. Thank you. And then Cheryl can let you know all about Surrender School. And she'll put that in the chat, I think, because there'll be follow-ons to this at Surrender School. And Michael, can't tell you how much we appreciate this. Such great stuff. Thank you so much for your kindness. Then, Michael, if you want to end it with a, I don't know, prayer of your choice or however way you'd like to end it, and then we'll stop the recording after that. Thank you.
Okay. So I invite you to settle in your chair or whatever you're sitting on, and just to find your breath, rise and fall of your belly and diaphragm, and just to be present to your breathing and relaxing on each out breath. And then bring some attention down into both your legs. And all you're doing is just putting the spotlight of your attention into the left and the right leg and noticing what you discover. Maybe nothing, maybe there's tension, maybe there's sensation, but you're just bringing attention down into the legs, from the hips to the knee to the feet. And continuing to breathe and relax on each breath. And then bring attention into your upper body, the arms, the trunk. And just noticing when you put your attention there, what you discover. Maybe sensation, maybe tightness, maybe temperature. And then bring some attention into your heart. And from this place of attention in your heart, visualize someone that you love deeply. And imagine that this heart of yours is like a sunrise, and that you're shining a loving attention onto this person who you care about deeply. And just to abide with your heart for a few moments. And then move attention up into your head, which often is busy with lots of thoughts. And I'd like you to imagine from your head center that you are gazing out into the galaxy, into this starry sky. It's beautiful and broad and expansive. And just abide with this sense of being able to perceive and look out into the depths and breadths of our universe. And then in your own way, to yourself, just say, thank you. And when you're ready, open your eyes.